Welcome back to Mindset Hacks, a segment of the podcast where we give you perspectives and practical tips to raise your resilience, mindset, and mental wellness. This episode to talk about purposeful productivity and minimizing painful procrastination. We have a full-time coach and a master implementer, Marc Teo.
Hey, what's up, Kevin?
Welcome to the show.
Good to be here, man.
I see you're here with your classic signature shirt.
Yes, the master implementer shirt.
I mean, I see you in your videos, and a lot of times you have that shirt.
Yep.
I want to share a funny story before we start.
Sure.
It was not really a funny story, but I felt it's interesting that one day I was talking to someone in a bookstore because I just enjoy talking to strangers.
Yeah.
And then after I told him what I do, right, he said, "Hey, you know it's Marc Teo? He does like those coaching stuff." I'm like, "Oh yes, I've seen him before." I can't remember his name though.
You can't remember his name?
I can't remember his name. That's a sad thing, but it shows that hey, you have a presence and people watch your stuff.
Honored, man. I had no idea that would like come back to this part.
Yeah. Maybe do a quick introduction of yourself and then I'll talk about why I invited you on the show as well.
Yeah, for sure, man. So, my name is Marc. I'm the founder of this movement called the Master Implementers, right, that everybody know about. So, it really came as a response to the fact that I was in this education space, right? People who were studying business, investing, right? Personal development, right? But I realized through my years of observations, right, that people are just they attend a lot of programs, they pay thousands of dollars, I think, in the past, right? But they're still not achieving the results that they want, right? Or still stuck in an area of life for a very long time. So I think that was a huge point that I saw that I became more passionate about, right? Because I was still teaching investing, I was teaching digital marketing, right? But I think this was the area of life that I was very passionate about. Right. So a few years later I jumped to different roles, right? But so I started this officially in about 2020, about October. November.
That's quite recent, like in the timeline, right?
Yes, for the business. Right? So before that I've been like sharing every once in a while for free, right? As a casual thing. But I started it seriously, right? And so right now I coach, right, in terms of I have my own mentees to teach, but at the same time I still do talks, I still teach with workshops, right? Just to really to get people to understand the fact that it's not just about the information, right? But it's really about the implementation. So that's a word that I love, right? It might not be the sexiest topic that people talk about, like money and stuff, right? But I think it's something that's meaningful to me, and I really want to spread it.
That is what stands out, because everyone is talking about just information, like inverted commas, the sexy stuff, right? But that no one wants to talk about implementation, right? Or less, I would say less. And the fact that you kind of focus on that, and I see that, look, the reason why I also invited you is because I just like the authenticity of your content.
Thanks, man.
the way you write and the way you interact, it's very like, you say that sometimes you want to take breaks, you just take breaks, right? Even though it's about productivity, it's also about purposeful productivity. It's also about being profitable and happy, you know, because sometimes productivity is associated with burnout and all these things. So I think I really like that lah. And I think implementation. I think yesterday I was doing I mean, when this is released, it won't be yesterday anymore. But I was doing a social selling persuasion with Eric Feng. I think you've hosted him as well.
Clubhouse,
The Clubhouse, right? It was a great session. 150 people turned up. I said at the end of the sharing, one line I shared with them, that an ounce of implementation is worth more than an ocean of knowledge.
Wow, I love it, man. I'm gonna use it.
do borrow it. Do borrow it. I kind of adapted it from Robin Sharma. It's not exactly, he didn't exactly say that, but I adapted it to my own words.
That's
but
good, man.
That's so naturally, okay, tomorrow I'm hosting you. I think that's lovely. So we're going to talk about implementation today, specifically on, you know, how to be productive and also how to minimize or painful procrastination. If you look at the title, I said painful because
that's a good word.
Because I think sometimes it gets painful because fear is costing people a lot of things.
Yes.
You know, it's costing them from a lot of things. So so let's go into it.
Excited.
I'm very excited. I think you really talked about being a coach and everything, how you became get into coaching, but what's the biggest reward from it? Just a teaser question before we get into the meat of it. What's the biggest reward of coaching?
Yeah, man. Wow. Some people might say, oh, it sounds cliche and all, but I love the fact that, right, when people drop me a text or they just feedback and say, hey, right, well, thanks to you, right, I managed to achieve this so and so, right? So whether is it even like, it doesn't be like big achievements, like I said, wealth and all, that is good, right? But I think it's even stuff like, oh, right now, right, with what you have shared, right, I don't feel as lethargic anymore. I don't feel as I'm procrastinating as much as before, right? I have higher energy levels to do what I love, right? So I think it comes from the small things to that all the way to big stuff. Like I think recently one of my coaches, right, she wrote a post, right, and recently she had about 600,000 views, and she started from nobody. right? So, and it's not so much I gave her the tactics and stuff, but I think it's the fact that she kept having faith, right? She had a bit of fear, right? She kept going over and over again. So when I see such transformations, right, in the results that they have, right, and the kind of life that they are living, right, I think that to me, right, is the most fulfilling thing, to really give value, right, and to see transformations and results happening from there.
Yeah, and those transformations you talk about, right, are very, very vulnerable and very not organic, sorry, very authentic.
Yeah.
Because I also follow you, and I
Yeah.
I see their stories as well, the way they share, the way they talk about you, and it shows because you cannot hide results, you cannot hide people's love. That's what I always feel. That's what I always feel, and it will come out in some shape or form, you know. So I yeah, that's pretty amazing. So we want to really extract as much value as we can from Marc, what his secret, so to speak, to help these people do so well. Let's go into productivity first. Specifically on purposeful productivity. The reason why I chose this word also is because I noticed it in your description. Share with me why you chose this word together with productivity.
Oh, thanks for asking that, man. Because I think what happened is right now in the space, right, from what I see, because I have been studying the space, right? I think right now, since about 8 years ago, I've been studying like more than 100 books about productivity, right?
Oh, wow, that's a lot of books.
Yeah. So, like getting things done, right?
Sure, yeah.
7 Habits, right? Recently, I think the big one is Atomic Habits, right?
Yeah.
But one thing I realized is that productivity is great, right? You get to do more output, right? But ultimately, right, the purpose, right, of life, right, if I could share, right, my definition is just to lead a much more passionate, joyful, and fulfilled life. Right. So if people are just productive but they're disliking the process, if you don't like what they do, right, I personally feel that I'd rather you just be unproductive, because you're putting so much effort, so much time into it, right? So some people might find it controversial, right? But why I always talk about purposeful productivity, and then I add in passion as well, right? Because you're enjoying yourself in the process, right? Is that it's not for you to find out what's your 10, 20, 30, 40-year goal, right? But it's really to understand, right, what are you doing all this for? So for example, I think about 2 to 3 years back, right, I was working in a digital marketing role, right? And over time, right, I got to realize, hey, I don't really like running ads, right? Because most of the time, because I'm running Facebook ads, right, most of the time was just me trying to appeal to Facebook, say, please give me back my account, or please don't disable my ads. I didn't really like it. I don't think I was giving much value from that, right? But I understood why I had to do that and to be productive, because, right, I knew that was a high income skill for myself, right? That was a skill that could help me down the road, right? Writing persuasively, right? Persuading and being the people that I know that can support me in my environment and growth, right? So it's great to have that 20-year, 50-year vision, right? I think that's great and all. But I think it's all boils down to whatever you're doing, right? Does it have a specific purpose in mind, right? For your goals down the road, 3 to 5 years, right? So I think that's why I always like to combine both. And then I like to add on a little bit of a passion, right? To just make sure you enjoy the process. And, right, you are also not neglecting the other major areas of your life, your health, your relationships, and your mental wellness. Like I think you share a little bit about. So I think overall that's why I talk about purposeful productivity, and why I feel that it's a lot more important than just another productivity hack. Because that's anybody can go about doing that for themselves.
That is a very robust answer, but it also represents what you're about. Like you live it, you breathe it. That's why it comes out so naturally. And every single day, you're reading about it, thinking about it. You're thinking about how to help someone with it as well. So it shows, like, it really shows.
Thanks, man.
That's really nice. And that's a good segue to the next question. Like, if you have just 3 minutes, right? I know this is a tough question, but I will ask you to elaborate later. But if you had just 3 minutes to share with somebody about boosting their purposeful productivity, what will you share with them?
So I tend to ramble on. So if it goes above 3 minutes, you can cut me off. I tend to ramble on and speak really fast when I'm excited, right? So 3 minutes to speak about purposeful productivity, right? I think number one, right, is not to go straight down into the hacks, right? Well, I think that anybody can go about doing. I think firstly is to find out what are things that compel you, right? What are things that you desire, right? And it sounds, like I said, it sounds cliche, right? But one thing I realized is you find things to do, right, that is supporting you or makes you excited. And this can be even, like, for example, if you're 9 to 5, right? Even as a side hustle, a side project, it can be volunteering. It doesn't have to be just about money, right? Find that thing that excites you first, right? The people that can support, the people that can help, right? And then you move on, right, to being productive, right? So, and that's when I also can talk a little bit about 5Ps. I think about 2 minutes left, so I'll try to go straight to it. So, purpose is one, right? I said, like, what do you do? What do you do? What compels you, right? I talk about priorities after that, right?
Okay.
What are the key things in life you want to prioritize, right? So, I talk about 3 to 5 things, right, on a quarterly basis. So, you can review that on a regular manner. So, I don't talk about annual priorities, I talk about quarterly priorities. Right, from priorities, I talk about planning, right? So planning about the goals, the action steps. Are you making sure it's effective, right? So I think that is a bit more smoother already, right? And then what's your, how do you perform on a regular basis? So everybody can talk about planning, the hacks, right? Downloading the software, the user tools. But I think a big part of motivation or productivity is actually just about increasing your energy levels. So what do you eat? Do you sleep, right? And stuff. And then last one is the process of the productivity. That's when the productivity hacks come about. Yeah.
This is a great. Definitely under 3 minutes. In fact, we have time to feature what you brought.
Oh,
it's very apt. Look at that! Wow, my goodness! Usually I get usually I get a cup of water for my guests, but today is the first time we don't need this because we have abundant supply over here. But water is a key part of productivity. People don't see that.
It's scream out energy, man. Yeah.
Energy.
So I realize people are constantly dehydrated, right? So it's not like, as in, even like developed nations, like even with water everywhere, because people are just into their own task. So I do this as a reminder myself to drink more water, right? Obviously, you can see it's not refilled because now it's 9 a.m. of this interview, it's like 3 p.m. But it's a big bottle reminding me to drink all the time. So I highly recommend. It's on Shopee and it's like $20. So yeah, for anyone's interested.
Love it. Okay. I think that's great. I think we talk about the 5 Ps, right? Like if you all want to find out more, I think definitely drop Marc a DM or go and look at drop his links for you to find out more about that. We don't have time to go into every single one of those 5 Ps in detail, but I do want to go touch on a little bit of them, right? Some of those 5 Ps. You talk about priorities, planning, and performance.
Yep.
Okay. Priorities wise, right? What's the maximum number you recommend for people? Because sometimes I feel like people are doing so many things at once, right?
Yes.
Does it differ from people to people? You feel like generally people can only have a max capacity from your experience?
Yeah, so what I would say, right? So obviously I think we know that there's 4 major areas, right? I think people have different definitions. Your health, your wealth, your relationships, and I thought a little bit about self, right?
Okay.
Are you growing as the person you want in terms of character, right? And stuff. So and what I say is, right, okay, it's good to still have goals and objectives, right, for all 4 areas. But my personal suggestion is have at least at most 5, but I usually recommend 3 for people just to get into the game, right? To have 3 major priorities, right? Which area of it, and the rest, right? To just set a minimum baseline, right? Just set a baseline to say, okay, this will not be my core priority in the per se that I'm just going to focus all my effort, my energy on reading on it. But what are my top 3 that I want to put a bit more time on a regular basis, right? So it could be growing your investments, right? It could be growing your side hustle, your business, right? It could be growing it could just be getting better at a 9 to 5 job so you get promoted down the road. It could even be better relationships, right? With your family, your loved ones, right? And once you know what's that top 3 to 5 key priorities, right? And then on a weekly basis or the daily basis, right? You can think about what can I do to try to enhance that a little bit more. And then the rest is more for you to just set the baseline, right? So that you don't put so much of your bandwidth and your mind, right, to everything else, and then you won't be actually good at achieve meaningful progress for any of that.
I love that. I think that's also a good transition into talking about planning and performance. Just one quick tip when it comes to planning. What is something that you found useful that maybe not many people know about? I think everyone knows about scheduling and everything, but is there anything that is you find a bit nuanced that you can share?
So planning, right? So same thing about, I think when it comes to like same thing about priorities, right? So after I choose the top 3 priorities, for example, right, I would go and think through about what are the top 5 most important action plans to do, right? So and then I'll plan that out, right? So it's about my thing is because okay, let's say you're on the key priority, right? There are 20,000 things that you can do, right? But what are the top 5 effective that move the needle for me, right? And then I'll put that down, and then that's why I'll start tracking it and areas like that. The second portion, right? Just very quickly, right? When it comes about like planning and the actions, right? Is I will also do it on a weekly basis. What are the uncomfortable tasks I need to do, right? So to be very clear about it, because I think in the past, right, when I was sharing with people, okay, what are the top 5 things you need to do. But sometimes, right, I realize is that the top 5 things are easy for them because they already do it on a regular basis.
Okay.
So I'm not focused on things that are easy. I'm focused on things that are uncomfortable because most of the time, the things that are uncomfortable is the one that moves the needle, right? Or they're the bottleneck for your
Can
progress.
I ask the example of an uncomfortable thing? Is it a revenue generating activity?
Yeah, so not necessary. So for example, right, I can even share from my own perspective, right? So for me, right, I'm in a coaching business, right? I'm helping with workshops and coaching. But one thing that's been really uncomfortable for me, right? I think two key things I can think about. So I love the speaking, I love sharing, I love directly impacting people, right? But something I've been like struggling procrastinate, right? Is actually looking at the systems, right, to make sure that it's more scalable. I think secondly is also looking at my business finances, right? Because why I'm like, it's okay, I'll just grow more, I'll just impact more people, right? The money will come. But ultimately, there should still be some form of system or holes and controls in place to do it. So my big uncomfortable task, right, for this week, right, was to just make sure I go down, look at the finances, right, to make sure I can start planning and tracking for the future. So that's uncomfortable. The next quick one, right, is for the simple people. I think a lot of people, right, they are just fearful to come on like to do a Facebook Live or just to do a post. So that's a classic example of something that's very uncomfortable for most people out there as well.
Yeah. That also stops fear, which we're going to talk about procrastination, right? Why people procrastinate is partially because of fear. Last thing before we move on to procrastination is about performance. Okay, performance. What are the elements that increase performance?
Wow, that's a really good question, right? So like what are the different elements or my core focus, right, is actually about energy, right? So energy, right? But I think what other people will talk about, other the people that I've researched and learned from, right? They also talk about actually everything else I've been doing. Having a compelling purpose, right? Priorities, planning, right? Having goals set into place, right? So personal goals for yourself, right? I want to touch on a little, a little bit of energy, right? Because I feel that it's slightly
underrated.
Talked about.
Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So the key element, right? My take is of course then is the usual, right? Then back to the priority like sleep, right? Nutrition and stuff. But just one tip that I think that could be talked about more often, right? Which is the fact that people think that right, the time to take breaks, right, is only at the end of the workday or it's during lunchtime, right? Or before you sleep. But one thing that have helped me so much, right, to increase my energy levels, right, I think people could kind of feel when I talk to them enough, right, that my energy level is pretty high. So why I can work from like, let's say 9, 10 a.m. all the way to 11 p.m. and still have a high level of energy, right, is because every hour or so, right, I take very intentional breaks for myself. Right. So what happened is a lot of people when they take breaks, right, they're using social media. Recently I was talking yesterday, someone said, "Oh, I read articles and books, right, take a break." But what happened is it still stimulates the brain.
Correct.
So what I do is I do this thing called box breathing. Some of us, some of you might have heard it before, right? I do it very intentionally, and I do 2 quick things, right? Number one, right, I acknowledge myself. So I think the talk about element of energy is not just physical energy, but I think mental energy to make yourself feel good. Right, so I acknowledge myself for what I've done. It feels a bit weird when starting out, right? But it helps you feel good about yourself from a nervous system perspective, right? And then number 2, right, I start setting my intention for the next task, and that's what we call clarity, right? Not in terms of clarity, my life goals and direction, but even about what is the next thing I'm going to do for the next hour. So these 2 things, right, box breathing about 3 to 5 minutes, right, and then I'll drink water in my big ass bottle, right? And then I'll do some jumping jacks to get myself moving, right? And if I'm feeling a bit more lethargic, that's when I'll take a cold shower.
And that primes you also for the next activity, right?
Yes.
You kind of plan it beforehand already, but you prime yourself again for it. Is it right to say that?
Yeah. So what I do is typically, right, the night before I already know what I'm going to do for the next day, because that increases the likelihood I'm going to do it, right? But I'll still always remind to set my intention, right? Not just in terms of what am I going to do, but who am I doing this for? Who will benefit from it, right? Besides myself, who else, right? My family, my loved ones, right? Or my community, my students, my mentees. I always remind myself who will benefit if I do a good job of it. I think that really helps me for that matter as well.
That anchors and is also tied to your purpose.
Yes.
Yeah. That's great tips. Really great tips for people because I think even for myself, right? I've never scheduled intentional breaks, not even in a week. Don't talk about a day.
Wow.
Right? It's not even in a week, and I'm actually starting to feel it already. I'm honestly starting to feel it already. Like my energy levels dip, and sometimes you just feel like this morning I just woke up, I just feel like wow, cannot. Yeah. But somehow that passion takes over. Yeah. But I still think it's important to, like you said, manage your energy, and something I'm looking into.
Yeah. So I'm gonna add in one quick portion, right, about managing. So what you could do, right, is just set a we talk about scheduling and stuff, right? Yeah. But one thing that's helped me is, for example, like I already said like Friday nights I'm never going to do work. Even if so, usually I have date nights, right, with my girlfriend. But even if she's not around, right, I'll be doing my own stuff. So like last Friday she had to meet her friends, right? I was watching Justice League on my own, right? So what I just recommend, right, is just to put say this is my cut off time from work, right, on a certain day, right, and just make sure that I don't do work in intentional basis. But yeah, like talking about specific stuff we always discuss a bit further after that. But yeah, that's a very
good stuff.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Set aside time for a break.
Yes, very intentional time on a weekly basis. Yeah.
Okay. Last question when it comes to productivity before we go into procrastination. I've seen a lot of productivity content online, right? Have you seen situations where the local context matters or personal context matters? Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing, right, as in, it's just the animal of books, right? Because what happens when you are reading a book, right, is that they are downloading or they are uploading to you, right? How you want to call it, right? All that has worked for them.
Right? Exactly.
So sometimes, right, and I don't think it's like a bad intention, right? But sometimes it seems a bit prescriptive, right? One thing I would do usually, right, when speaking to people and mentoring and stuff, right, is always to find out what works for you, right? Instead of this is what he said, right? Just go and take it. Right. So my thing is that yes, the content can work, it can help you out, right? But what really helps you in a sustainable manner, right, is to make sure that these strategies, these tactics, right, are things that work for you in terms of being personalized. So a very quick example is the Pomodoro technique. Technique. Everybody knows about Pomodoro technique, 25 minutes, right? But some people, right, especially for my opinion, right, people who are doing the deep work, right, a lot of creativity involved, a lot of writing, right?
Do
25 minutes is pretty short, right?
I've never done that.
Never done that. Yeah. So I'm always like, how come I've never been able to do that consistently? But I realized for me, it's typically about 50 minutes to 1 hour. So I think you have to test out a bit. It sounds a bit troublesome and stuff, right? But once you get the sweet spot, right, this is something you can use for your life. Right, so that's why I would highly recommend to just test it out to see whether it works for you, right? Instead of just trying to take everything that people say. Because what happens if you try to absorb everything people say, right? There might be contradictions, there might be conflicting stuff, right? And then that doesn't work for you.
Values different, personality different, nature of your work is different. So many variables. I think one thing about implementation is personalized. I think that's what you do for people. That's why a coach comes in also, right?
Yes, when the mentoring one-to-one comes in.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Let's talk about procrastination now. I think it's linked to productivity, but it kind of stands alone as well. Why do people procrastinate? Are the biggest reasons in your experience?
When I talk about procrastination, right, this is my own definition, right? There are typically two ways, right? One is, like I said, comes from fear, right? It's really about, I know I'm supposed to write a post, right? But I'm afraid that people will judge me, criticize me. So there's one deep part. The other part is just like simple things like, I would say even drinking water, man. Like people just, I'll do it later because why the water is in the Kitchen, right? It's stuff. So I'll try to touch a little bit on it. So for the second one, it's a little bit more, I would say simple. Because the other one can be due to like deep-rooted fears and stuff, right? So for example, right, I think this is just, some of you might have heard it before, but I always like to tell people that, hey, what is common knowledge is not common practice, right? So what I would do, right, is for things that are simple, right, that it's not really because of fear, just that some people say lazy, lah. I think people like use the word lazy. Is just make it as easy as possible to do it, right? So plan in advance. So for example, why I'm buying a big ass bottle is because it's easy to drink, so I don't have to go to the kitchen and stuff. People might think I'm lazy, right? But it helps me to drink a lot more water, and I get to do workouts or my 2 minutes jumping jacks, right, on a separate basis. So make it as easy. I think number two, right, is if it's very difficult, right, for you to get started, even if you know your why, you know why you're doing this for, you know the benefit and stuff, right? I would then talk about accountability, right? Getting someone to kick your ass to do it, right? Say, if I don't do this by this amount of time, right? For example, I'm drink water, right? So I'll fill out at the morning every day, right? If I don't finish it by midnight, for example, right? I got to pay somebody $10, right?
Wow, the whole thing.
Yeah, so this is 3.7 liters.
So 3.7 every day.
I drink about so the full one is 3.7, so here's about 3 lah. So it's fine.
Wow, still a lot.
If you're exercising, it's fine. I realize. If you're not, then yes, it becomes freaking bloated. Like in army in Singapore, right? I know you can drink. So that's, I think these two very quick tips, right? Just to overcome it, right? Plan it way in advance, reduce the friction to go about doing it, right? And then number two is just, if you get it's uncomfortable, but just get someone to kick your ass. Just that instant support for you.
Love it.
Then we're gonna talk a little bit more about the fears and stuff, right? This is something that I struggled with back then, right? If people didn't know me about 4 years or 5 years ago, right, I was afraid, terrified of posting. I didn't know what people think of me. Now I'm just I'll just go doing it. So a few things, right? I think number one, right, something that I use it to ground a lot of my coaches and mentees, right, is that when you first start sharing and posting, right, the likelihood of people actually reading and caring about what you post, right, is going to be very little, right? And it's both some people like, oh, really, like, it mean that doesn't matter? But to me, it's very liberating because it means that you can go out there and keep trying, right, and just keep taking action so you can improve, right? But the fear, right, I realized, right, more importantly, right, comes from the fact that you're probably just thinking about yourself, right, instead of what you want, right, or the people you can help. So it all boils down to purpose, right? Because if you think just about yourself, obviously you're going to keep in a state of fear, right, of not wanting to do it, right? But if you think about who you want to benefit, right, and what I have some of my mentees do is to write down exactly the names of the people that they know they'll benefit, right, if they to write the post, right, and that gives them a bit more context and grounding about what am I doing all this for, right? So that's the second one, right? I think really about reminding people of the fact that this is not about you, right? The fact that why, to me, right, the one of the things about a much more fulfilled, passionate life is that you're not just living for yourself but other people, right? So that's what I talk to them about and areas like
Can I just add on to that before I talk about other fears, right? But if you even look at my principal board over there, one thing that really helped me also start this podcast you were asking me, right? Is when I can't see from here, it's a bit small, but I'll share with you. It says that fear is preceded by ego, and there's no fear in the spirit of service. I learned that from Lisa Nicholas. She's a global speaker. So she said that like a lot of times our fears, right, are triggered by ego, what other people think, what I stand to lose. And that perception leads to a lot of fear. Like when I started a podcast, I think, will people think I'm stupid? You know, will I be able to host like big names? You know, will I be able to connect with them? So it's all about me. Then I sit down and realize that why am I starting this podcast? And at the end of the day, it's very simple. It's to change lives and possibly save lives. And then I ask myself, is my ego more important than the lives I'm going to change or the lives I'm going to save? Then I actually got very emotional because I thought, it doesn't come close at all. And that led me to actually just start. And then I realized that, wow, it's not about you and what you stand to lose. It's about them and what they stand to gain, which is what you just mentioned.
Exactly, man. Like when you think for, right, how can you help other people, right? That is when that drive comes in, right? And that's when it leads to much more like fulfilled life, right? About helping and being of service to others, man.
What if people are not other-oriented yet, right? They're still figuring things out, but they want a more kind of immediate way to solve their fears. Let's say fear of what other people think, fear of judgment, fear of rejection. I think for a detailed one, go and check out, I will link it up. Did a recent one, right? On all the fears and everything. But in summary, like what can people do about their fears apart from thinking from other person's point of view?
So usually what I do, right, I share stories, right, to try to get them. So when I went deep into that, was really the foundation, right, of that portion, right. What I do, right, is I just immediately tell them, say, two things, right. The criticism, right, typically, right. So I'll say in a much more excited manner, right, by stuff. I'm like, dude, like, do you know when you get that first negative comment, right? That is freaking awesome. So I make it sound like it's a freaking celebration because I said, everybody, right, who is a certain level, even Elon Musk, right, Steve Jobs, whatnot, right, even they had detractors, right, and actually one of the reasons, right, when you get a negative comment, right, is likely because, of course, not all the time, right, is that, you probably triggered somebody else of being comfortable, right, or somebody's ideal, right, and sometimes, right, people need being uncomfortable to grow, right, if they're not uncomfortable, they wouldn't grow. So sometimes, right, when you have that negative comment, right, and especially if it's without substance, if it's with substance, that's great. Right, that is when you actually can use it. So quick lesson. So I think last year during COVID, right, I was sharing. I think there was this one big quote that went a little bit viral, right? It was like, if you don't leave COVID or 2020 without a new skill, without a new hustle, right, you are probably lazy and unmotivated, right? So I shared that, right. I was just sharing. I just reposted. I didn't talk much about it. Whoa, I had a long ass like negative post, right? Comment, from one of my ex school friends, right, from like 10 years back, right, saying, oh, you're insensitive, like, what are you talking about, right? You're just you're being what you call pastory and stuff.
Toxic positivity, whatever.
Toxic positivity. So initially I was like, oh crap, man, it felt bad. And then what happened, right? I started reading deeper into the comment, right, and I realized, right, it was likely triggered, right, because it didn't fit her life or her definition. And people, like, I'm sure you know now there's the cancer culture and stuff, right? And what happened was, so I knew some friends who knew her, right? So I just had a chat, hey, is she okay? Because I realized, right, that comment usually came from the fact is because that person is not doing well in certain areas of life, right? And I asked, how is she? And I realized for her, right, she was actually feeling very disillusioned because right now, she's working in a company, right? That's not what she really wanted and what her dad wanted her for the past 10 to 20 years, right? And I think that she was feeling, she didn't really like it, she hated it. And I realized that she was in that space of like, oh shit, my life sucks and stuff. And when she sees other people like being in that space, right? Not saying she's jealous, right? But she's just like venting it out, right? And the second one, I realized, and this is another big thing for me, right? I treat it on a very logical manner, which is that, hey, yes, you're fearful, right? But it's likely not about you, it's about others. But number two is, right, I always treat every single feedback, right, as feedback, right? As feedback for myself, right? And so one thing I'll ask from the experience, what can I learn from it, right? So for me, right, I try to be a bit more sensitive, right? Try to be a bit more, do what I do. Some people like it, some people don't, right? So, and I realized, hey, even if people don't like it, I know I did my best to treat it in a much more holistic manner for the people who want to benefit from it.
I love how you treat it from both sides, right? Not just about screw other people, it doesn't matter about them, but it's not just about that. It's also about social sensing. And I talk about it a lot as well, that you need to be sensitive to some extent. Because I feel that as a creator, you need to be responsible, but there is a certain line you can't please everybody. I understand that. But some people use that excuse to not improve their craft. And the fact that you can say that and understand and empathize, and then, okay, maybe put some disclaimers here and there, I think that's very powerful. And I know we went a bit off tangent. It's kind of the same, it's similar, but the core principle is that you must realize, celebrate and reframe that fear.
Yes, there's a reframe,
Reframe and celebrate that fear, right? Fear criticism shows that you're actually moving forward. One thing about rejection I also want to share with people, right, is that very interesting. Yesterday, I had a social did a persuasion with Eric. So I was asking him, like, what is it about people, right, that he have interacted with so many people? What is one trait that makes people very persuasive? You know, what's a commonality among them? I didn't expect his answer. You know, he said that they are absolutely obnoxiously thick-skinned.
Wow.
They say they don't care about rejection to the point where they get so used to rejection that it doesn't bother them at all. And that causes them to take a lot of action because they no longer fear what other people think. It's no longer a procrastinating barrier. And I think so many of the times, right, and this is also linked to perfectionism, right, where we want everything to be perfect. We want everything to be nice and good, right? But it's never the case. It's never the case. And we keep focusing on the outcome alone. It's worse for your procrastination because you have all these fears that goes into the end outcome. And then you can't live in the present. So I think one thing is really, like you said, just do it and then
so
you know, get used to rejection.
Get used to the whole so talking about that, right? So so what happens is most people, right? So the people who are fearful, right? I'll first ask them, do you actually desire, right, to overcome that fear? Right? If they overcome, right? So they say yes, right? I say, okay, yes, I can be the one who talks about your childhood, your past, right? I mean, that's right. I don't think I'm the best at it, for me, right? I'm just getting good at getting you to take action, right? So what I'll say, right, is, okay, if there's something you really want, right, I'll think about it. Are you afraid of bungee jumping? Right? So most people are, some people aren't. I think it's fine, right? I said, what is scarier, the first time you do a bungee jump or the 50th time? Right? You're like, oh, first 50th time. The same thing, right? When it comes to rejection, talking one-to-one sales, right? Speaking, right? Posting. I say, dude, I guarantee you just have to do it the first time. You're feeling so freaking sad. That's fine, right? But the 50th time you do it, right? You just be like, whatever, just strap me up. I'm just going to jump immediately, right? So that's just another reframe I think to talk about, right? Because that's how you build your thick skin and your immunity to fear at the same time as well.
Love it. Last question. Last question. It's been an amazing 30 minutes with you. Last question, what are some top tips for reducing procrastination, apart from the ones that we shared?
So, top few tips, right, for reducing procrastination. I think I mentioned a few other. I think one of the big ones, right, I would do is, I'm going to go back about the basic fundamental, which is schedule, right? So, for me, right, my calendar is my life, right? So, I will keep to my calendar as much as possible, right? So calendar, right? So everything I set out there, right? I'm going to do it to the best of my abilities, right? So that's number one, right? I schedule it, right? Number two, right, is I will have what I call, right? This actually I learned from Eric Feng himself as well, right? Which is, so especially for different things that you want to do, right? I will actually have what I call daily themes of the week. Right, so for example, for me, right, I'm running a business and stuff, right? So Monday, right, I'll be doing deep content, right? Tuesdays, I'm doing systems and operations, right? Wednesdays, I'm doing usually fulfillment for my coaches, right? Or building up better systems for them, right? Thursdays is for me to do like one-to-one meetings, calls, right? Going out there to speak with people, speak with partners, and then Friday is more for reading and strategy, right? So talk about procrastination, right? It also depends on what the specific task, of course. But what I do is, instead of saying, I have to do, when do I have to do it? Because the less clarity you have of a certain thing, right, the more likely you are able to, the more likely you are going to procrastinate. So instead of, for example, say, okay, there's this thing I wanted to do, right? But if it's within this team, let me put into this date, and then that day, right, I can frame myself and say everything I need to do, right, is going to be this day.
I really like that. Yes. I really like that. I mean, it's not applicable for of course, apply to your own context. Like, if you're students, then maybe set a math day or something like that.
Yes.
right, a chemistry day or something like that. But for me, I think very applicable. So, like, because I'm all over the place sometimes, I think like you said, one day for content, right? One day for just thinking about, okay, inviting guests. Just one day, put it, batch it. Okay, I will implement it, of course, in my own context. Right? Like you said.
Sure. So, in the past, when I was a student, right, the first few days of the, because Sundays I'm more relaxed with my friends and whatnot, right? So Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, right, I usually tackle the subjects I don't really like the most, right? Statistics, accounting, numbers, so for me. Thursdays, Fridays, a bit more relaxed, so I do a bit more qualitative stuff, right? So that's a bit how I do the things. Another quick one, right, is, so the first part of the day, right, I never have meetings, right? Now we're doing a morning meeting, right? Because this is a physical one, I do it. But most of the time, right, 90% of the time, right, I don't have meetings because why? I'm focused on my deep work. Right, so things that might procrastinating because of like writing and stuff, right? You can just schedule in the mornings, and then for me, right, only like from 1 p.m. onwards, and then I have meetings and stuff. So that's how you can schedule it at the same time as well.
Another principle also doing the toughest thing first, right?
Yes.
That's that reduces inertia. Wow, I think we have come towards the. I mean, we have come to the end of today's sharing. Where can people find you?
So I'm very active on Facebook, right? You can check my profile, Marc.Teo. You can check out, I can put the links and stuff. Instagram is also same, Marc.Teo. So I share a little bit about my stories, a little bit more behind the scenes of what I do, right? So I think these two are the main big channels. And at the same time, if you want to find out about more of the 5P blueprint, right, I have actually developed, I think, a 20, people like to write the number of pages, 23 or 26 page guide, right, on it for free, right? So if anything, you drop me a DM, right, just DM 5P, and I'll be able to send it to you immediately as well.
And he has a YouTube channel as well.
Yes.
So over 1K subs and many interesting interviews. So do check that out as well. With that, do share this episode. I'm sure it benefits some people, very implementable.
Very implementable.
Very so. Do share people who feel that they're fears taking action of procrastination or they want to be more productive. Do share this episode with them. Follow us on Spotify if you're looking at this on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify for shorter episodes. Join our Clubhouse Club as well for more intimate conversations. We might even have Marc on one day. With that, stay resilient and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.